Felicitous greetings, fellow fanatics. Welcome back, one and all. I'm Adam the Fanatic, and today we're taking a look at Four Gardens, an action selection and hand management game by Arcane Wonders and Korea Boardgames. Without any further ado, let's dive in. In Four Gardens, 2 to 4 players will be competing to prepare the most beautiful garden they can. To win, you'll need to collect resources from the pagoda in the middle, then use those resources to prepare their landscapes. After a certain number of landscape cards have been completed by any one player, the game ends and you'll total up your points. For your first time setting up, you'll need to construct the levels of the pagoda. Individual layers aren't meant to be disassembled after being constructed, and I'm afraid I didn't take any pictures while building it. But once you're done with that, it should look something like this. Before you start each game, make the pagoda by placing the layers in a random order. Each player should be seated so that one side of the pagoda clearly faces them. Choose any player to orient the layers so that the bottom shows no icons, the second layer shows 1, the third layer shows 2, and the top layer shows 3. Place the score tracker and resources so that they're within easy reach of all players. Then, shuffle up the landscape deck and deal out 5 cards to each player to form their starting hands. Then, deal 3 more face up to the middle of the table where everyone can see them. After that, take the 3 stacks of reward tiles and place them near the score tracker. For the wild and victory point tiles, make sure they're arranged so that the lowest values are on bottom and the highest values are on top. Next, each player should take a playing tile in 4 score cubes of the matching color. On the score track, each player should place one of their score cubes on each 3 space. Choose a player to go first, and you're ready to begin. Before explaining turns, let's briefly discuss panoramas. Your main way of scoring VP in the game is going to be by completing garden pieces to advance your cubes along the score tracks. In the top right corner of each card, on the front and the back, you'll see 1 to 4 circles and a slightly larger dot. These show which panorama they belong to. There are panoramas of 2, 3, 4, and 5 cards. The dot shows which spot that card goes in. How do you make these panoramas? That's what your turns are all about. Turn structure in Four Gardens is fairly simple. On your turn, you'll take 3 actions by playing cards from your hand. The first action you can take is to lay groundwork. To do this, simply take a card and place it in front of you. The only thing to keep in mind is that there are a couple of restrictions. Firstly, you cannot have more than 3 unfinished groundwork cards in front of you. We'll get to how you can cultivate and flip them in a bit, but you'll have to do that before you can play any more. Secondly, you cannot have 2 cards that go into the same spot of the same panorama. All other actions will require you to discard a card. In the upper right of each card, you'll either see the pagoda or a wild icon. If you see the pagoda, you may discard that card for the rotate and collect action. When you do, rotate the indicated section of the pagoda, and all of those above it, exactly 90 degrees in either direction. After that, it'll have an up arrow or a down arrow. If you see an up arrow, start by looking at the bottom of the pagoda and taking the resources shown, placing them into your planning tile. If you still have room, keep moving up the tower until either your planning tile is full, or in rare instances, once you've gone through the entire tower. The third action you may take is take a wild. Once again, discard the card to play it, then choose any one resource from the reserve. You may either place it onto your planning tile, or place it immediately onto an unfinished groundwork card. If this is the last resource you need, that will complete the landscape card, but we'll cover that in a few moments. First, we have one final action to look at. Every card in the game has the reallocate resources action in the upper left. When you play a card for this action, discard it. Then, you may rearrange any and all resources that you currently control between your incomplete landscape cards and your playing tiles as you see fit. You may also discard any resources that you do not currently need. Bear in mind that in order to place a resource on a card, it must need that resource in order to be completed. So you couldn't put a grass here, but you could put 3 stones. However, this card requires, and thus can hold, 1 of each resource. Now that you know the 4 actions you can take, it's time to explain completing landscape cards and the rewards you gain for doing such. Whenever a landscape card has all the resources needed to complete it, return the resources to the reserve, then flip it over. If more than one is completed at the same time, resolve them in the order of your choice. The first time you do this, it will be fairly simplistic. In this case, you see a red fire icon in the top left corner, so you'll move your score cube up 1 space on the red track. However, let's say you later complete another card in the same set. In this case, it's a yellow, so you'll advance along the yellow track and trigger the red again since they're part of the same panorama. Whenever you continue to build in the same panorama, you'll continue this pattern, meaning that large panoramas can get some pretty crazy scoring combos going. If you ever reach the rightmost space of a track and would advance further, then you instead push each of your opponents back a space on that same track. If they are on the leftmost spot and this happens, then they are removed from that scoring track and cannot score that color for the rest of the game. Another brief note, sometimes you'll see this multicolor wild symbol. When these cards are triggered, you may advance any score cube of your choice so long as it has not been removed from the score track. Obviously, that gives an advantage to large panoramas. However, small panoramas are easier to complete, and completing a picture comes with a prize of its own. Whenever you complete a panorama, regardless of size, you'll take a bonus tile. You may only take one tile from each pile, but each has their own uses. The small planning tile effectively expands the one you start with, allowing you to hold up to 5 resources in your tile. The VP tiles simply give you the number of victory points indicated at the end of the game. And finally, if you get a Take Wilds tile, you immediately take any combination of that many resources. And just as with cards with the same symbol, you may place them immediately if you have any incomplete landscape cards. This can even cause you to complete more landscape cards after claiming the tile. After you've played 3 cards, you must refill your hand to 5. You may choose to take cards from those face up in the middle or draw from the top of the deck. You may take one card at a time to see what the back of the next card shows, but do not reveal new cards until you are finished with your turn. Once you have 5 cards again, refill your hand to 5 and then play passes to the next player. Play will continue like this until a single player has completed a given number of landscape cards. You play to 10 cards in a 2-player game, 9 in a 3-player, and 8 in a 4-player. After that happens, you enter the end game. Finish up the current round so that every player has an equal number of turns. Then you'll move on to scoring. To get your final score, simply total up the victory point values of your position on each of the scoring tracks. And if you have a VP bonus tile, add that to get your final total. Whoever has the highest score is the winner. In the case of a tie, the player among them with the most completed landscape cards is the winner. If it's still a tie, then the player among them who has the largest completed panorama wins. Component-wise, the game is really good. The tokens and tiles are fairly standard cardboard, and the wooden cubes are just what you'd expect of score cubes. The cards are standard thickness and have a smooth finish, and the artwork on them is quite nice. I should also briefly mention that even among a single panorama, the landscapes aren't always identical. Sometimes they'll change up details here and there. But of course, the centerpiece of it all is the pagoda itself. Not only does it have a lot of table presence as it stands, but even the plastic clips that hold it all together are molded to look like a natural part of the structure. And finally, there is a fairly solid insert included that has room to hold everything, including keeping the individual parts of the pagoda safe and secure. All in all, Four Gardens is a fun, fairly light game. It's easy to learn and teach, sets up and plays fairly quickly, and would probably make for a good gateway game. Although admittedly, I've not personally tested it in that capacity. The way Panoramas combo makes for an interesting dilemma. Do you go for larger sets and try and rack up those big points? Or do you rush for smaller sets and try and get those bonus tiles early on? Player interaction is admittedly a bit light, but it is still clearly present. I've often said that wonderful art cannot make a bad game good, but it can make a good game great. And that's just what it does here. In conclusion, I find Four Gardens to be a solid 7.5 out of 10. If you're interested in purchasing Four Gardens, my first suggestion, as always, is to check with your friendly local game store to see if they can get it in stock. If you're unable to find it, or simply wish to learn more, links are included in the description. But what about you? What do you think of Four Gardens? What action selection games do you enjoy? If you have any questions, remarks, or opposing points of view, leave them in the comments down below. And don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. And if you really enjoy my work, please consider funding my channel on Patreon. Until next time, farewell, fellow fanatics. Thank you again for watching. I have plenty more to share with you if you're interested. You can click up here above my head to subscribe to my channel. You can click over here on my monitor to see the most recent video that I've worked on. Or if you prefer, you can click up here to open this mysterious vault and see what video that the YouTube algorithm has picked just for you.